So go to nearpod.com and this is the code that you need to enter. Okay, so at the beginning you have a quiz to do. It is very simple. It's about the last lesson that we have learned together. So I don't have any on nearpod. I see now he's not on nearpod. Enya? Okay, so most of you have finished. Now today we are going to talk about population. We have learned the level of ecological organization and about the food chain and the food web on the ecosystem. We're going to start with population. Now we're going to define again the terms, and we are going, at the end of this lesson, you are going to state the factors that affect population size and how is the growth of population affected by different factors. And at the end, you are going to be able to interpret or to recognize some population growth. Okay, who's going to define population? So what is population?
It's a group of organisms which belong to the same species and they live in the same area.
Very good. So population, like I said, it is a group of same species, so organisms that belong to the same species, which live at the same area at the same time and they interact with each other. This is what we call a population, and we can give different examples like this. Here I have only two of them, so for plants and for animals, the zebra. So these are the same organism and they make a term of population. Today we are going to see how population grows up and what are the factors that affect the population. In this video, it illustrates which are the factors that affect the population. How is the population size affected?
Welcome to Moving Math and Science. In this video, I'm going to talk about limiting factors. Any abiotic factor or biotic factor that restricts the number or
Okay, 1 second.
One that has inconvenienced us both. The man in black is proving to be more difficult to address than expected. Possess the determination, unusual talents. Action. Ambitious, perhaps. Organization. I know such skills. Fighting our enemy. It's become cautious as yet. But emotion can turn the most circumspect of men careless.
Or reproduction of organisms in an ecosystem is called a limiting factor. Take this ecosystem found in the fish bowl. The limiting factors could be the size of the bowl, the amount of water, or the temperature, and any of these can limit the number of fish that can survive in the fish bowl. Limiting factors can be dependent limiting factors and independent limiting factors. Dependent limiting factors depend on the number of organisms. For example, the amount of food available for each organism depends on the number of organisms in this ecosystem. And independent limiting factors does not depend on the number of organisms. For example, the amount of rainfall does not depend on the number of organisms. Density dependent factors. It is a limiting factor that depends on population size. For example, it could include competition, predation, parasitism, and disease. Let's look at a list of abiotic limiting factors. This could include sunlight, climate, temperature, water, space, soil, chemistry, fire, and natural disasters. And a list of biotic limiting factors include the number of plants, number of animals, amount of competition, number of decomposers, number of parasites, and disease. There we go, limiting factors, biotic and abiotic factors that limit the size, number, and reproduction of organisms in an ecosystem. Thanks for watching, and Moo Math uploads a new math and science video every day.
So what was a limiting factor of a population? Oh, like this, we saw from the video, it is. 1 second. It is any biotic or abiotic factors that affect the population growth. It can be a living organism, an animal, or radiation, let's say, or food, or disease. It can be even a disease, or the supply of water, or for space. Now, what are some factors that affect the population size and the rate of growth of this population? Now here there are immigration, birth, immigration, and death. And from here we can see that birth and immigration, they increase the population size. It means that new organisms are entering on the population. Meanwhile, death and immigration, it reduces the population size and the population growth because organisms, they are removed from this population. So these are how we can say birth and death, or immigration and emigration, affect the population. Not only humans, but all living organisms, they are affected by these 4 factors. Some other factors that are limiting factors for the population growth, they can be like it was their biotic or abiotic factor. It can be food, predators, and disease. Now, the food supply, they are an important factors for a population. If the population increases too much in number, then the food supply, it become we can say it a main factor which will limit the population growth. Predation there, if there are many predators in the environment, then it will increase or it will affect too much the size of population, and even the disease, they can affect the population. Because they are organisms which belong to same species and have same characteristic, means that a disease can, if affect one organism, it can easily affect even the other organism in the environment. So the disease, they are, we can say, the main factors that can increase the size of a population. Now, the population growth of any kind of animals, it has this shape. It is a curved shape. It is this one. It is the graph of population growth. And in this curved shape, we can distinguish 4 different phases. The first one, it is called the log phase. It is when the population, let's say, it is introduced to the environment, and this population has a low number of breeders, means that the birth rate is lower than it is bigger than the death rate. And after the population, it is adapted to the environment, the numbers over the time, the number of individuals, it will increase. And this phase, we call it the log or the exponential phase, which is a rapid increase in growth rate. And the birth rate here, they are more and more than the death rate. And after the population reaches, we can say, finish this exponential phase, this rapid increase of growth, then the third phase that a population will go, it is called the stationary phase. If you see here, we don't have too much growth. It is when the birth rate and the death rate, which are 2 factors that affect a population, the size of population, they are equal. And the population, we can say, the environment cannot support more individuals from this population. And we call it that, we can say, the population has reached the carrying capacity of the environment. So carrying capacity, it explains us or tell us the amount of any population or individual that can be held by its own environment. And when the population reaches this stationary phase, then the population, the number of population will drop down. And this is because the environment is unable anymore to support this population due to the lack of resources or different causes. And this phase, it is called the death phase. So these are the 4 phases that we can see in a population, in the growth of a population. And it is called the sigmoid graph that show the population growth. Is it there?
Yes.
Okay, so these are important, the 4 phases. Now, how are, we can say it, these population curves on the graph of population, how they are found on a food chain? So here we have 3 organisms, the hawthorn, which is a producer, the field mice, which is a consumer, or let's say a herbivore, which feed on the hawthorn, and the kestrels, which is a consumer, a carnivore who feed on field mice. And the green one, it represents the producer. This red, it represents the field mice, and in blue color we have the kestrels or the tertiary consumer. Now, how can we interpret this graph? Now, if we start from the producer at the bottom here, at all these populations, we can say the first phase was the log phase, when population is introduced. We see here that normally the producer, they are low, we can say more in number than the field mice, and the field mice are more in number than the kestrel. So in this way, it will, in the environment, there is food for all the organisms. In the increase at the beginning, if we see here, first it is the population of the producer who start to increase, and the increase of this population, it will increase the second population, which is the herbivore. And if we see here that the herbivore are increased, the second one, and the third one, because there are many field mice, then the kestrel will have a lot of food, so this population will start to grow, the third one. This is how we can say the population curve is connected in a food chain. So at the beginning, all the changes will happen at the bottom of a food chain. So let's say a producer, then primary consumer, then secondary consumer. And even with the other one, it is the stationary phase for the hawthorn, for the producer, and then it is the stationary phase for the field mice and the kestrel, and at the end, both population, they will go to the death phase because the environment it is unable to support this kind of population anymore. So this is how they are related with each other. Now here you have a activity. You are going to identify the phases. So you are going to draw over the number, which are the phases of the population growth. Donna, Arcel, Vanessa, have you finished? Claire. So the first one, it represents the, let's see, one. So the first one is the lag phase.
Lag phase.
The second one, this is okay. So the second one is exponential phase, then stationary phase, and at the end, the death phase. Okay, very good. Have you finished all? Only Arcel and Clea hasn't finished yet. Okay, let's pass to the other. Now this graph, it differed. We can say, we said that the population, the graph of a population, of animal population or plant animal, it has a form of a curve shape. And here we have the human population, which has this other kind of, let's say, shape. Now, these are the year over the year, how the population, human population changed over the year. And this is the number of individuals. So it is till 2000, or about 7 billion humans. Now, what does A represent over here?
The lag phase.
The lag phase. And then if we see here, there are many years till the human population goes to the second phase, to the B phase. So at the end of 18th century and at the beginning of the 19th century, then the human population start to grow up and entered to the exponential phase. Now, can you give any idea why this change happens over this time? Can you relate it with the history?
Yes, after finishing the wars, the population came to the growth.
What?
After the wars have finished, the population have come to a growth after the Second World War.
After the Second World, yes, very good. So the war was finished, and we know that in the 19th century, now over this time, it is the industrial revolution happened. So many kind of, we can say, many aspects of the life changed in human. They were they have more resources, more food, we can say it, more medical supply after the industrial revolution. And this is why the human population started to grow. And now we have C and D that they aren't present yet, which represent the stationary phase and the death phase. Okay, now these are two graphs. We can say it in West Africa and Western Europe. Now, can you say the main difference between these two? So they represent the percent of population of men and women, and they are the age of this, we can say, individual in the population. So what are the main difference between the population of West Africa and the population of Western Europe?
There is more population in West Africa.
What was that?
There is more population in West Africa.
It is more population in West Africa. In which group age?
The population in West Africa is younger.
So, yes, it is younger. Why do you say it is younger? Because they have more individual at this group age. So, there are more individual, we can say, newborn child in Western Africa than the Western Europe. There are more, let's say, children, infant, young people in West Africa than in men and women both, than the Western Africa. But we see another difference here, that at the middle age, we can say in Western Europe, there are more individuals than in West Africa, and normally if we go to older, then there are even less in Africa than in Europe. What can we say? Can you say for this difference? But why there are this difference between West Africa and Western Europe? So how may this difference be accounted for? Yes, Caitlin? One second.
It's because of the environment and the condition that the environment provides for the population.
And what are these conditions? We can say, how do they change from West Africa to
For
West?
example, in Africa, it's very hot, and also the economic
Development.
yes, doesn't provide enough food or work for the people, and people do not make new offspring, and the population cannot be raised.
Yeah, that's good. We can say even that we can in Western Europe, because they have, we can say, more supply for their life. They have increased medical supply, food supply. They have increased the age of, we can say, the lifespan of humans. Meanwhile, in West Africa, because they are suffering from different, let's say, disease and different respect, they don't have some countries there, or people, they suffer the food supply, the lack of food supply. So their we can say that their group age or their lifespan of humans in Western Africa, it is, let's say, lower than in Western Europe. Okay, thank you, Kidley. This is, we can say, the population in Japan, which is changed by the group age. And if we see here in 1950, after, let's say, the war, there were more birth, more children, and then the population decreases the number of birth, and so, but the number of, if we see here in the middle age, it is increased. And now, because they have, we can say it in 2055 forecast, they are thinking that it will be lower, it will change the shape, this graph. So the lower the birth, but the human lifespan, it will be more. So humans, they are going to live longer due to, we can say, all the supply that are provided for the population. Okay, now you have a question here. You are going to write which the phases hasn't the human population reached yet. So you have the graph of human population. Iona, are you here? No, okay. So you have finished, most of you. So we have here the death phase. Human population hasn't reached the death phase. Some of you wrote the stationary phase, and the correct answer is what I have here. Ersia said the stationary and the death phase. So in human population, if we see the graph, AB, it represents the log phase and the exponential phase. We don't have the stationary phase when the number of individuals will be, we can say, it's stable, and the last phase, which is the death phase. Okay, that's all. This was the lesson for today. It was about population and the factors that affect the population.